Step 1, before I've uttered even a single syllable about this being a numbered list, grab your sketchbook and open it to the page of that sketch that you told yourself would make a really nice painting, but you never actually turned it into a painting, but you kept thinking about it for like a year and a half and put it off for a reason that doesn't really make sense, because today is the day we are painting it today. It's today. Hello everyone, Arlisha here and welcome to another video. My goal for today is to make a perfect painting. I know that's going to mean something different for everyone, and I really do want to go into a list of things that make a painting something that I find so much joy in creating and also have so much joy in the painting afterwards. It's not necessarily always a formula that you can hone in on and get it right and get it perfect every single time, but over the years, when I have those instances and those occurrences, when it does happen, there's a lot of common factors. So we're going to talk about that today, and hopefully some of that will be relatable. That's the plan anyway. So let's jump into the process and paint something that will make us happy. Before we get too deep into my tips or strategies or things that I personally want to keep in mind when trying to make a painting that I love, I want to make sure and tell you what's actually happening here. So I took the sketch that you saw a little bit ago that I loved from my sketchbook. It really is like a year and a half old, and I was looking through the sketchbook. I can't think of what made me think of this particular sketch, and I was just thinking about how I really loved that concept and I really wanted it to be a painting. So I literally just took a picture of it with my iPad and traced over it in Procreate. And then this is the printed traced sketch that I did on my iPad. I printed it onto Canson Mixed Media the Canson XL Mixed Media paper. And you may have noticed that I did print 4 of them because I was going to do multiple little color comps, these little thumbnails here, but I ended up loving this first one so much that I didn't do any other ones. So even though I'm about to give you advice that says maybe don't do it exactly the way I did, I guess that's kind of a bit of advice on its own, is if you know that you love a concept and you know you love maybe a combination of colors or something like that, and even if you think, oh, I should try other things, but you're going to regret having not done that first one that you loved so much, just do it. And you can come back to the other ones in the future. So as I prepared to transfer the sketch, again, I loved this sketch, like the original proportions from my sketchbook, so much that I just printed a big version of it, then used tracing paper to transfer it onto my final watercolor paper. I don't usually use tracing paper because I don't like the lines that it produces on the watercolor paper I'm painting on. I love loose, light, feathery sketch lines directly onto my watercolor paper, but this was good for getting the proportions of the final painting, and I did end up, you'll see momentarily, I did end up going back in anyway and, going over the actual sketch with a pencil, but this allowed me to keep what I loved and what I wasn't really willing to give up about the original sketch. So ultimately it worked out. Okay, so my first big tip that's really going to encompass several smaller tips is just to slow down. Some people may have the opposite problem of overthinking and never actually starting a painting, but I usually don't give myself enough time to breathe and to think. And it's kind of like, it really can happen from both directions. So sometimes when I don't actually take action, like active slowing down time, then I never start because my brain is jumping around too much and I don't have a clear idea of what it is that I want. So that can lead me to never starting. But also there are times when I go, I have to make a piece of art right now in the next couple of hours. And sometimes I actually do, like for work, I have to get something done quickly. And instead of taking 10 minutes to do the things that I'm about to mention that you should do, I just rush into something and I'm left with something that isn't really satisfying. So the first thing that I want to slow down with is I want to give myself time to sketch. This is the part of the process where I sit down with a sketchbook and just do small thumbnails. I usually just draw a rectangular box on a page, a small one, so that I don't have enough room to focus too much on details. And then I just fill the box with a potential idea for a painting. And then I do another one and another one. And sometimes I really love the first one, and sometimes it takes me a few to find an idea that I really connect with. But if I try to sketch directly onto my watercolor painting, and this will be something that kind of flows into the other tips as well, the more thinking I can do before I'm sitting down with the actual piece of watercolor paper that I want my painting to be on, the more thinking that can happen before I'm at that stage, generally speaking, the better my paintings turn out. So I need to take time to sketch and to think and to fall in love with an idea. The next thing I constantly have to remind myself to take time to do is to swatch. So to sit down with a few colors, swatch them out, and see how they look together. Sometimes this is in the same page as that thumbnail sketch, so I can put the colors on top of it or right next to it, and I can just see how colors look together and then try mixing those colors and just see what kind of color palette I might be working with. After that, I need to take time to make thumbnails, which is what you saw earlier on where I only did one of them. That's what I would consider to be like a thumbnail or a color comp more specifically. So where I have a more final idea of what the composition is going to be, and then I need to put together the sketch and the colors that I swatched and just try it out and see what they look like on top of each other. Again, still much smaller than the size of the final piece so that I'm not taking too much time at this step, because sometimes if I, exhaust the idea at this stage, I go, this sketch in my sketchbook or even this painting in my sketchbook is good enough and I don't actually need to do a bigger version of this painting. And then I disconnect with the idea because I spent too much energy on the color comp on the little test version. And I know that doesn't happen for everyone, but it absolutely happens to me. So I need to keep the beginning parts shorter, but they still need to exist. And I mean, the process of thumbnailing, swatching, and doing a couple of color comps might only take like half an hour or an hour or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an incredibly long time. It doesn't have to be a year and a half like I have here between the initial sketch and when it actually turns into a painting. And doing the color comps is when I actually get to see the values of the painting. So I get to think more about where things are going to be really light, which parts of the painting are going to be really dark, and how that's all going to get balanced out with the colors that I've chosen. So, super important step. Something that I wish I did more often, and I did it in the case of this painting, and I think it's a big part of why I love the finished product so much, is going back and looking at paintings I've done in the past that I love. So I'll show you on the screen between the time period of 2019 or so and now, the paintings that have been my favorite. And I know it sounds really dramatic to say it like this, but when I look at all of these paintings together alongside this painting that I'm doing today, it's the sort of thing that makes me go, oh my goodness, I finally found my art style. Isn't that crazy? Like, it's like the number one question that, artists on the internet want to either have answered or try to answer is, how do you find your art style? And I've even made content about it in the past before I started making paintings like these. And this is the painting where I felt like something finally clicked after 5 years. And I said, yep, I want to do this. I want to do this for many, many years, make paintings like this. So looking at a selection of paintings that have meant the most to me and have made me feel like I was sharing a unique artistic voice, something that was specific to me, has been such an important, crucial step. And I can really feel it when I'm trying to force something outside of this, and I just don't love it as much. To jump into something that I also learned when I look at all of the paintings that I love together, I learned that one of the most important things is to, one, use reference images. It's just so important to have an idea, especially when you're working with poses, like if you're doing work like I do where the human figure is involved a lot. Use reference images, and most importantly, the paintings that I love the most, I always take my own references. You'll see later on in this painting, if I haven't shown it already, that I had a couple images up like from Pinterest just because of the anatomy in this painting. It's very loose, even how I did it. It's very gestural and not super defined, but I don't have anatomy like this on my actual body. So I was referencing several different pictures of backs and shoulders, but the pose itself and the gesture, I did take references of myself, and I went and checked, and I actually did do it, way back when I did the initial sketch, the initial concept for this. So I was able to use those as well as a few new things. But yeah, the paintings that I tend to love the most are ones where I took my own reference images. And that can be as simple as like the angle of my head, or the relationship between a couple different body parts, or even just like a hand pose. In the end, it just feels like such a more personal experience when I've taken my own reference. Another thing that I fall victim to oftentimes when I'm painting is I try to ask too many questions at once. I've told you all before that I like my paintings to be explorations, and I like to take the time to ask questions, but sometimes I ask too many at once. So it doesn't really help me when I try to say, oh, what if I use these watercolors? And what if I use this paper? And what if I use this color combo? And what if I try this pose? Like if I try to do too many different things, or things that I'm less familiar with at once, I don't really have a firm foundation in something that I know enough to create a painting that I really like. In the end, it may be a fun experiment and I may have learned a lot from it, but I might never want to look at the painting again. And this kind of leads me to another point, which is seeing things that you can learn from or improve in your finished painting doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hate it. Now, obviously, when it comes to how you feel, I can't just say to you, hey, don't hate your artwork. Like that doesn't help. That's like trying to tell someone, hey, you're depressed, just be happy. Or, hey, you have anxiety, just calm down. Like it just doesn't work. That's just not how it goes. So of course I can't make you love your work, but by taking all of the steps that I've mentioned previously, it really helps me to hone in on my own headspace. It's almost like instead of walking past a mirror, looking at it real quick and then walking away and then forgetting what I look like, I stop and I look and I turn my head and I look from different angles, even if it's objective or not, whether it's saying, this is the shape of my face, or this is how my ears look, whether that's just noticing it or saying, I really like my freckles, like whether it's objective or subjective and you're saying what you like and what you don't like, taking the time to look and to observe yourself in making sketches and in doing color comps and finding, ooh, I really like how like a phthalo turquoise and a warm red together, that's a beautiful color combination. And taking the time to notice those things about yourself is so important. And I know that not everyone has all the time in the world to make art, but I also have to remind myself that I make art because it brings me joy and it makes me happy. And if it's not doing that, it's absolutely worth the extra time to find out how to reconnect with what it is I love about it. It's actually been really nice reading through some comments. I asked over on Instagram what it was that stopped you all from loving a painting when it was finished, and you all gave so many great answers. Things like telling myself when I sit down that it's time to make something awesome, Or sometimes maybe you really like the painting when it's first finished, and then the more time passes, the more you dislike it. And I can totally relate to so much of that. I wish I could give more profound, amazing answers about how to overcome these things, but I really do think that taking the introspective time to see yourself in the art that you've created in the past, or maybe even to create a mood board of things that other artists have made that you really like. I love inspiration boards, taking the time to pool a bunch of images into one thing and look at them all at once and go, what is it about all of these things together that I love? Just allowing myself time to think, so good, so helpful. And those are the tips I have for you today. And really, a lot of it is things that I wish I could have said to myself 2-3 years ago. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any other tips that you would share, please do leave them down in the comments. As always, a huge thank you to my members here on YouTube and my patrons over on Patreon. The real-time version of this video should be up by the time this video goes live. There were so many questions this month, so I cannot wait to sit down and answer all of those. Thank you so much. This painting, as well as prints of it, the original and prints, will both be available for sale on my shop, which I will leave links to down in the description. And I hope you have enjoyed this process. I'm absolutely in love with this painting, which feels really great. Okay, I'm gonna go, and I will talk to you all next time. Okay, bye-bye.